Welcome back to our morning coffee time live stream for Tuesday, September the 8th. Happy that we're able to do this today. We had some adverse weather yesterday. Strong winds came in from the east, bringing a lot of smoke from wildfires and creating power outages in many parts of Washington and Oregon. Fortunately for us here, the power outage was just a blip, and the air has cleared overnight. I was still smelling smoke, but happily I could see the stars this morning when I emerged from my hut in the forest and looked up through the trees into the night sky. So, little good, favorable conditions. I want to thank someone for sending me a couple more copies of the Dhammapada. And if somebody told me they were sending these, I've forgotten who it is. So maybe you could email me again so I can thank you and directly. But I got a couple new to round out my collection here. I'm going to have to spend a whole year doing a comparative study of a dozen of my favorite Dhammapadas. These two are Penguin publications. So one is a very old version from Juan Mascaro, I think is the translator. And this is quite an old one, I think from the early 70s. And then there's a newer one from Penguin from Valerie Roebuck, which is quite a nice addition for people that are taking an interest in the Dhammapada. This newer edition, which I believe was published in 2010, has a very, very nice introduction. It has a nice glossary, and it has an extensive section of notes. And it's a fairly modern translation. So only 10 years old now. So anyways, whoever sent those to me from, I think it was from the postal package was from Great Britain. Thank you very much. Well, this morning I thought I would start off with a set of questions that Eleanor put in the chat early on. There's some nice stuff in there, so I think I'll kind of go to that and see where that takes us time-wise this morning. So this is a 3-part question. Should we force ourselves to be grateful? Sometimes we take the habit of seeing everything negatively. I believe that forming a new habit takes effort. So do I. And so does the Buddha. So I wonder if just noticing the negative thoughts while meditating will be enough. What would you suggest a person who tends to see the negative in life does? Should he set up some type of plan to think positively every day, even if it's forced at first? So this is a good question, and there are many people in this boat. Some people, for whatever reasons, good karma, conditioning, temperament of some sort, tend to see the cup as half full and others half empty. The early part of the question, force ourselves, it kind of depends what we mean by force. Personally, I don't like the word force. It sounds a little bit too aggressive and violent, and is not all that effective. if it is coming from that place or tinged from that place, we can't really force ourselves to be differently. If we could, a lot of problems would be solved a lot more easily. We could just recognize what's the right way to be in the world, and through some act of will, change ourselves. And as I was reflecting on a little bit yesterday, the Buddha's teaching on anatta, or no self, is pointing exactly to the fact that we do not have such powers. So instead, it takes a very natural and conscious cultivation of the supports, excuse me, the supporting conditions to be different. So, and there's a variety of things that we need to do. I mean, one is we have to realize that this tendency to constantly be coloring things or perceiving things through a filter of negativity is unskillful and leads to a whole lot of unnecessary suffering. And then on some level that it is something that we could do a lot about. There are choices we can make. Perception is not reality. Perception is perception. And a lot of the negativity comes from how it is that we frame things, what features we tend to give attention to. So one of the things to really examine is just how much attention we give to the fault. And this is something that the Buddha gives several sort of teachings to. Part of the way to eliminate negativity, anger, and ill will is to stop attending to what's wrong, or stop dwelling on and obsessing on what it is that is wrong. And this could be a very strong habit in us. I think it even comes a bit more readily when somebody is quick-witted and sharp and intelligent. It can be easy to see what's wrong in the world, to see the fault, the flaw. But excessive attention to that, or unwise attention to the fault, supports negative perceptions of negativity, anger, frustration, ill will, as well as a whole host of other emotionally unskillful states of mind. I think there's sometimes the truth trap. I mean, by unskillful attention to the fault, you don't want to. It's not a flight into ignorance or delusion. You don't want to try to take refuge in some untruth, but this should be fueled by a very clear-sighted understanding of the unskillfulness and the harm that one is doing by unwisely attending to the fault in other people or in the world or in some situation that is fueling negative emotions, be it a grudge, be it frustration, be it anger, be it ill will. And through mindfulness and awareness, when we realize that we're not just observing some unskillfulness that exists in another person or in the world or what's wrong, we're emotionally invested in some way that is not in alignment with a deeper truth that supports the alleviation of suffering and the rising of well-being. So noticing negative thoughts is a crucial kind of component to that. Becoming sensitive to and aware of negativity arising in the heart and in the mind. But awareness itself is not merely enough. One needs to understand that this is a unskillful mental state that needs to be brought to resolve, and effort needs to be put forth to bring it to resolve. And one of the chief things is like withdrawing the obsession and the attention that one's giving to the fault. Hopefully it's fueled by some insight into how that's not the best course of action, to be focused in that way, to be coloring one's perception in that way. If it's a bit of a durable habit and a temperament, then there's a few other things to consider. One is who you associate with. You know, if you have a lot of friends who like to spend a lot of time fault finding, griping, complaining, and dwelling on the faults of others and what's wrong in the world, then that can be a very strong condition for keeping us nurturing a habit of negativity. So associating with people that have either by just their disposition or their personality, an absence of that habit of always casting everything with negativity, spending time associating, giving attention, nurturing relationship with people that are a bit more inclined to the positive, to the sunny side, can be a great kind of help and support. And then also giving attention to things similarly that are directed at and focused at sort of what's true and what's right and what's beautiful in the world. So who it is that you spend time with and form relationships with, what it is that you give your attention to, these have a profound sort of effect. And those kinds of life choices are very important kind of conditions for giving yourself a bit more of a foundation and some better conditions to then implement these other practices of starting to just examine what a pernicious habit it is to be always obsessing and dwelling on the faults and seeing what's wrong with the world. And seeing how that is a bit of dukkha, and that is an unskillful kind of habit that can be sort of changed. And then one does the work of being mindful so they can catch oneself doing it, mindful so one can understand how it is that that happens, and then develops some skills and some skillful means to effectively sort of change the mind and deal with that when that arises, and to become increasingly sort of skillful in catching it resolving it, and replacing it with something a bit more positive. And so, there is effort, but it's not really force. It's working skillfully with conditions. And I would say conditions on many levels that helps one change. And because it is not self, this can change. One is not fated to constantly be skewed to the dark side or seeing things with negativity. It's just there's a variety of causes and conditions that one has a durable habit of doing that, but that can change, and that one can change that. I see this little follow-up here too. So, should I notice the negativity and maybe make a daily commitment to think more positively, such as practicing gratefulness, trying to look at my negative thoughts with a mindset, or trying to turn the negative thought into a positive one? Maybe after a few weeks of daily practice, the new habit of thinking more positively will become more natural. Well, it might take a little longer than a few more weeks, Eleanor, but essentially those are important kind of things to be doing. Notice the negativity, make a commitment to dropping it, resolving it. Notice, if you can, what features you're attending to that are triggering that, are nurturing that, and withdraw attention. And you're not really changing a negative thought into a positive one, you're replacing it. Thoughts arise and cease very kind of quickly. So a negative thought arises, and you can, and really, it's a negative train of thoughts. And then there's an emotion or a mood which plays out with a longer kind of time signature than individual thoughts. So you start to change how it is that one is attending to what's going on and generating neutral or positive thoughts and arousing positive emotions. And those displace the negative experience. And some commitment to a regular practice of arousing contentment and gratitude, reflecting on the blessings of one's life, and I always give some encouragement to start small in generating contentment and gratitude. Be content that the power's on. Be grateful that the air is clear this morning. Be content that you have a measure of safety in your home and in your town right now, and that you have the requisites of life. Shamina wanted to send her Anamodana, her brother-in-law, who she told us about recently has received stem cell transplant. Things are going well. Thank you all. That's good news. And Debbie has a comment here regarding Eleanor's question. Sometimes, for me, seeing something as a silly habit makes it seem less heavy and easier not to give weight to it. It's not me, just a silly habit. So this is an example of what I mean by skillful means. Over time, one will find various thoughts that really help one in putting forth right effort, in bringing a stop to or resolving some unskillful thought pattern. And sometimes certain unskillful thought arises in my mind, and I can imagine myself being this kind, loving parent, just sort of warmly shaking my finger, saying, "Come on now, grow up." It's really all a bit of spiritual immaturity, and we can conjure some more benign, spiritually beneficent sense of consciousness, and sometimes just smile at our foolishness. And sometimes even that is enough just to bring something to resolve and encourage one to move in a more skillful and positive direction. But we need a lot of these, and we need to be attending to the foundations of the path of practice to kind of support this sort of work. It's not like a few cheap tricks are going to do the job. We really need the whole power of the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path to kind of support a kind of longer term, powerful, and eventually irreversible transformation of being. And it's that which supports a very strong kind of exercise of skillfulness in our engagement with the world. And yeah, Debbie has another one here. I remember Ajahn Sona talking about sometimes just flicking away these kinds of unskillful mind states. So yeah, that can be nice too. Just come on. It's like the mind's kind of nattering away, complaining or something. You're just like, come on. Shh. And sometimes you can say just no or stop. It's like there's some rumination going on there that is unskillful, be it negative or be it some other sort of unskillful thought pattern. It can even just be a very useless kind of thoughts of proliferation, and one notices it just kind of like bubbling and working there in the background. And sometimes you can just say stop, which is, what is that? It's a way of using thought and language to arouse a clear wish for a better mind state, and infused with recognition that you're in the grip of something that is unskillful, or at least mildly unskillful, and nurturing a certain level of dukkha. So in meditation, when the mind is still under the grip of the hindrances, sometimes it could be very subtle, and it's obstructing and sort of preventing the mind from moving into a much more powerfully skillful sort of state of mind. And sometimes just with the recognition that the hindrances are still there and at play in the mind, one recognizes their effects and their presence, and then can just neutralize them, at least for a little bit, by recognizing they're there, the harm they cause, the obstruction that they're presenting to a more enjoyable and skillful state of mind. And you can just say, shh, or stop. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that today. And speaking of stopping, I'll stop here before we jump into some whole other conversation or question today. Thank you, Eleanor. It's a good set of questions and makes for a nice exploration. So don't leave it for tomorrow. Think of at least some little practice you can do and make a commitment. At least a 3-4 week commitment to yourself to spend a certain little period of time. It doesn't have to be huge. Practicing freedom from all negativity and devoting yourself to just generating thoughts of contentment and gratitude, or celebrating the goodness either in yourself or others. Doesn't have to be all about you. The emotion of mudita can be a really wonderful practice and way to sort of exercise celebrating the goodness of others and the blessings of others. And that's what we need to do. We need to exercise the habit of arousing skillful emotions and remind ourselves of just how much nicer it is to enjoy those as opposed to these other more unskillful emotional habits that we have. So be well, friends. And if you're one of my neighbors here in Cascadia, hopefully the wind and the fire danger and the smoke will abate without too much pain and suffering. So be well. See you all tomorrow.